Yes, hello tradies. Welcome to the Air Raid Siren, brought to you by the great people at HBF Health Insurance. Make the trade and join HBF, your health dream team. We both know what we're going to talk about today, don't we?
Tasmania. I was getting hot under the collar listening to Sam on my Friday night walk with Baxter, 6 o'clock. The first half an hour, Sam was going toe-to-toe with listeners and his colleagues about the Tassie future. Did you have two stints on AW on the weekend? Were you on Saturday as well?
No, not Saturday. I was on Thursday with Jackie. I did her sports half hour.
Right.
Yep. Which was when all the Tassie stuff was blowing up.
So I heard you going toe-to-toe with Tim Lane, but I thought that was from the Saturday. But was that from the Friday?
That was Friday. That was
the second
second hour. Yep.
Yeah.
After 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yep. Tim wasn't. Tim gets fired up about it, but I love debating this sort of stuff.
He's a passionate Tassie man.
He is.
So should we give a lay of the land of where it's at?
Sure.
So we're speaking on Tuesday, just because things could change from the commission meeting today and all those sorts of things. A week ago, Liberal was in power in Tasmania, and they were a month away from taking the stadium to Parliament, to the lower and upper house to get ticked off. And the belief in Tassie was that it would get passed through and that construction would get underway in Christmas period. So they'd start construction by December or January if that was passed through. The team is due in 2028. As part of the contract, they need 50% of the stadium built by October 2027 to greenlight the contract. But I think if it's 30, 40% on track, it'll all go ahead. What we saw last week was the opposition Labor leader, Dean Winter, force a vote of no confidence against the Premier, Jeremy Rockcliffe. So Labor against Liberal, and that got up by one vote in Parliament. It essentially means that we'll learn in the next 24, 48 hours if they're going to the polls, but it looks like they will. Either Rockcliffe, the Liberal Premier, is going to hand over the leadership to someone else in his team, or they'll go to the polls. And the most likely outcome is they go to the polls, which forces another election. For the second time in 14 months, they will be back to the polls in Tasmania. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that means that the timeline around the stadium going to Parliament is going to be pushed right back. And rather than that being in the next month, we're looking at months and months ahead. And it means construction, where we thought it might start December, January, it could be starting in 12 months. Who knows? Who actually knows?
Yep.
That's the lay of the land. Where do you see this moving to from here?
Well, I don't think anything will change from the commission meeting today. There are at least two commissioners that I know of that are of the belief that they should consider delaying the team. And if you're asking me personally what I think should happen, I think that's the smartest move from the AFL.
Yep. And we've been talking about that for some time.
Yeah. And I've been on the record several times saying they're rushing this thing out. Mm-hmm. We now have a situation with political uncertainty that we don't know the true timeline of when the stadium or if the stadium will be delivered. There's also a suspicion from people in Tasmania, high-level people that I've spoken to, that if Labor were to get into power via an election, even though Dean Winter has been on the record saying that he's pro-stadium and pro-team.
Yep, so just to clarify, Liberal and Labor both want the stadium, at least that's what they've said.
That's what they've said. But there is a suspicion that Labor will try to build the stadium without a roof because it'll save them upwards of 200 mil.
Yep.
And therefore, it becomes a lot more attractive at a lower cost.
Yes, but not as attractive for the AFL, who have demanded in the contract that it must be a 23,000-seat roof stadium.
So that's why I think the AFL have to delay the team to make sure that they have leverage and to also make sure that there's absolute clarity for the other teams and which drafts are going to be impacted. Because let's just say, for argument's sake, right, that the AFL came out today after the commission meeting and said nothing has changed. We are pushing on for Tasmania to play round 1, 2028. Well, then if I'm Labor and I win the election and I know that the AFL said, we're pushing on, then I'm just calling you bluff and saying, well, cool, we'll build the stadium, but we're going to build it the way we want to build it and we're not going to put a roof on it.
But then the AFL have until October 2027 to rip this contract up.
I understand that. But ultimately, if they start – because when do they have to start giving teams knowledge about about draft concessions.
So I thought it was going to the commission meeting today for pick 1, pick 3,
Yeah,
whatever
so
they
did I,
get.
but it's not, is it?
I'm since been told it's going to the August commission meeting. So the AFL's been going around meeting clubs. They've been working on the executive has
so
been
they have
working
to tell them then.
It's meant to be going to the commission meeting in August to tick off the rules that Tassie will get for the first draft in 2027.
Yep.
Because it'll impact this year's trade period because clubs can actually trade 2 years in advance now. So this year, clubs will be able to trade 2027 picks, which has a direct impact on what's happening with Tassie.
Yep. I think this is a major test for Andrew Dillon, for the commission, for Richard Goyder. They need to be really strong here. Because as it currently stands, the stadium is a huge chance of not being built.
Yeah. Just one more on the politics. My query is, you're saying Labor may look to build it without a roof. Liberal have backed this stadium in. It's going to cost $1 billion now.
Minimum.
The federal government have tipped in 240.
Yep.
The AFL 15.
Yep.
It means roughly $700 million on current estimates has to come from the state government.
Yep.
Under Liberals' leadership. If Labor take that on, I can't see Labor, from everything they've said through this whole process, paying the $700 million. So it's either no roof, which would save, you're saying, $200 million.
Yep.
Or they look for private
investors,
which opens up a whole another can of worms.
And the AFL don't want that.
Well, the AFL don't really have a choice. It's the AFL have said to Tassie, deliver us the stadium however you deliver it. If the Tassie government can go out and find private investors, that's on them. But from what Liberal had spoken about early in the process, they weren't able to find any significant private investors. So it fell back on the government. Just back to timelines. So Team 2028, if you had have asked me last week before all this shit went down, the stadium, I think the best case scenario would have been late 29, early 2030 if they had started building late this year. I think that's now in jeopardy. It could be 2031 when this stadium's ready. If the AFL forge on for 2028 entry date, that means there's 3 years minimum.
I just feel like this is...
Where they're not...
Am I listening to me from 6 months ago?
We've all been talking about this. I can't see this being profitable, commercially viable, or attractive to players if you're playing at Bellerive and Launceston for the first 3 years.
Mitch, but it shouldn't even be 1 year. It shouldn't be 1 year.
But they were willing to cop 1 year.
But this is the stuff that really pisses me off. It fires me up. They're rushing this thing out, knowing that the stadium was never a chance of being delivered after 1 year of the team. They knew that, right? Everyone knew that. Everyone attached to the AFL knew that. So this was always a chance of happening now.
Yeah.
And I'm totally with you. That's
but
why
I reckon they would have delay the team. 18 months. You know, if the team...
18 months is too long, mate. Like,
I'm with you, but...
Do we not learn from Gold Coast playing out of sheds?
But there needs to be a bit of goodwill from... and the AFL, I think, have been pretty good around the goodwill to get this team going.
Fuck goodwill. This is not about goodwill. This is about the AFL being... They have a fiscal responsibility to the rest of the competition that the 19th licence isn't going to drain the other 18 clubs.
I get that.
So they have to have $1 billion asset. This is not 1980s. Okay, that these clubs are multi-million-dollar businesses that cannot afford to fail, right? We've had enough problems with North Melbourne and St Kilda being in debt for the last 20 years, most of which have been fixed, by the way. Like, this team should not be coming in, particularly when Andrew Dillon has been on the record saying they want to be competitive early.
I agree with you.
So you think Nick Dacos is going to want to go down to Tassie and play
Not at all.
6 games in Hobart and 5 games in Launceston?
Not at all.
I mean... Goodness gracious. By the way, it's a 2.5 hour drive. It's not from here to Geelong.
Yeah. I did it at the start of the year. It's one lane a lot of the way.
Is it one? I thought the whole way was 2. Is it 1? There you go.
From what I can
It's been
remember.
a long time since I've done the drive.
I can't remember. Apologies for I was asleep half the way. The cameraman was driving.
And it's like it's a bit of a dodgy road too. Like it's not as though it's a brand new freeway.
No, that's correct.
Yeah. It's just
No, I'm with you. I've always used the example of Will Day and Kai Loman. They're out in 2027. Tassie come to them. The other part of this too is broadcast and primetime slots. Okay, they've got a Friday night game this week in Launceston, Hawks Crows, but that won't be every week if the Devils come in. You need to be packing out.
That's in Hobart, right?
Launceston.
Oh, it's in Lonnie. Just checking the weather forecast.
The stadium needs to be up and running for Thursday and Friday night blockbusters against Collingwood, against Carlton, against Richmond, big drawing teams to get people down there. You don't want Tassie coming in and playing at 110 every Sunday at Blunston and Launceston.
Friday, June 13th, Friday the 13th down in Tassie. A minimum of 0 degrees, top of 14.
Is that Launceston?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Saturday, getting down to a low of 0.
So what you're saying at 10 o'clock when the last quarter's underway?
It'll be fucking freezing. This is why we need the roof.
And actually, one other thing I wanted to pick up from what you said on AW, you said that if you're building $1 billion stadium, all 11 home games would be in Hobart.
Have to be.
It's not going to be the case,
Well,
though.
then they should cancel the
because
10
they're
right
spending.
now.
The state government has pledged $65 million and the federal government $65 million to upgrading Launceston. So there's $130 million going into Lonnie.
Mitch, as I said to Tim, and I'll say to you, I don't care what they're saying the current deal is. Or I'll just ask you this.
It'll be a 9-2, 8-3 split.
Do you honestly think, and it's a big if this stadium gets built, right, and forget the billion, like it's going to cost closer to 2 than 1. It'll probably end up 1.5, right?
If they start building it in 5 years, imagine the CPI in that time.
Yeah, that's right. It's like, are we back ending the deal so we can trade out later? Do you honestly think if they build this thing, right, $1.5 billion stadium, it's got this amazing roof, it's got all this new technology, it's on the water, it's 3-minute walk from Salamanca, you've got a hotel there, do you honestly in your life think that if that thing gets built, they are going to leave it there dormant to play a couple of home games in Launceston?
Yes.
Okay, I'm telling you that won't happen.
You're a Tasmanian. You were born there, right?
Yes, that second part is accurate.
You know the divide. People in Lonnie will crack the shits massively if there's not a game or two up north.
Bad luck. Drive down.
And then this is before that. I expect a world where Hawthorn will be paid a game or two to play in Lonnie still. They've got 10,000 members there.
Even when Tassie comes in?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can see a world where Hawthorn plays a home game
in
Lonnie against the Devils.
But wouldn't that make more sense?
But you're not spending $130 million on a stadium to use it once a year.
Yeah, you're not spending $1.5 billion on a stadium to not use it. I'll tell you that much.
But they're getting all these big concerts and stuff.
Which ones?
The ones they've pledged to the community down there.
Do you think they'll go down there? Like, I'm sorry to sound like a smart ass here. Like, if Taylor Swift...
No, that's my point.
Like Kendrick Lamar or these... Like, will they go down to Tassie? I actually don't know the answer, by the way.
It'll have to be like the WA government, you know how they tip in money for like Coldplay, so the government go and get it done. It'll have to come out, and that's another drain on the government. I don't think anyone is actively going to go down there and play in front of a 23,000 seater.
But 23 is enough, though.
No, but
like
Taylor Swift can get 100,000 at the G.
Yeah, but that's rare. Like, Katy Perry just played in front of 15 at Rod Laver the other night.
Yeah, she might go there.
Yeah. Katy Perry's pretty big.
Yeah.
It's a flat way to end the Tassie conversation. All right, let's just finish with this. Give me a percentage chance of the Devils playing round 1 2028.
40%.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it. Yeah, I'd say 40. I'd say less than half.
I think the most likely scenario is it's pushed back 12 months.
I would agree.
I've read that document very closely, the AFL Tassie government document, and there are plenty of stipulations in there where the AFL can push it. What's the line for you? The cutoff. So, minimum time that they can spend in Bellerive and Launceston before it tips over and has to be pushed back. So, is it 12 months? Is it 18 months where you before you're into the new stadium?
Oh, I see.
Sorry, that was a long way of asking that question.
What's the line? Yeah, I mean, it should be 0.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be.
So the AFL were happy to cop 12, maybe 18 months.
Yeah, so 2 seasons.
Yeah.
That would have to be the cutoff.
Yeah. So if it's 2028 in the old stadium, if it's 2029 in the old stadium, if it gets to halfway through 2030 and the stadium's not built, that's a disaster.
Yep.
Yeah.
But remember, just back on the timeline thing, the Premier is on the record saying if we start building before Christmas, 2030 is like about the mark.
Right.
So it's not going to happen now.
Is that right? Did he say that?
Man,
Yeah.
Didn't you read my front page exclusive?
No, I was too caught up in the photo of you with your little cardigan in there.
Yeah, so so they have to start construction before
by
Christmas.
to have it ready by 30. And that's not happening now.
Yeah. So I would think we're looking at minimum 2031. So is the AFL really going to start this new franchise?
And play at Balreeve in 28, 29 and 30.
That's ridiculous. When all your top line players are coming out of contract that you've drafted. You pick 1 and 3 and 5 from your first year are all out of contract. And again, like Tim Payne, if you're listening, because I know he's a big listener.
You just said Tassie was fucking freezing.
Yeah, no, I'm just going back to the weather forecast. I'm just reading the Bureau. The Bureau says a minimum of 0. That's cold. And a top of 14 going into another minimum of 0, which means when the sun goes down at 9 o'clock, halfway through the second quarter,
Is there a later sunset in Tassie?
Whatever time it is. When the sun goes down and it's, because it gets colder as the night goes on. I'm trying if you're aware how weather works. It's going to be, 4 degrees?
Give me an over or unders on the long sleeves for the Hawks.
This is why we need a
Is Guinea in the longs? Is Guinea in the longs?
Yep. Guinea might need hand warmers.
I was going to say Sicily, but he's not playing.
Is he injured? Shit. All right, that does us for the Air Raid. So I'm brought to you by HBF Health Insurance. We'll see you next week.